Welcome to our presentation on visual display that we are putting together in concert with the Atlanta Apparel Mart. I'm Leigh Schwarzkopf with Project Partners Network, and my colleague Michelle Lamb from the Trend Curve are here, and we will be talking about all kinds of great things related to visual merchandising. With that, I'm going to turn off my video and we'll get into the slides here. Today's discussion, we will give some background on the importance of visual display, what's happening in the world around us right now. We'll talk about why visual display is so important. Michelle will talk about incorporating trend and how critical that is as you put together your displays and your interactions with your guests. We'll give you some tools and techniques on how to do it. We'll talk about next steps, and as Ashley mentioned in her intro, there will be an archived presentation available should you wish to review anything later. So jumping right into it, we all have a roadmap for how we think business goes forward. We think it's, there's a start and a stop, and we expect some bumps and curves along the way, but recently it's been crazy making. Who knows what to do, where you're going to go, how you're going to go about your business. But when the crisis ends, and it will, and we emerge from the chaos, and it will, we really do think, along with all the other predictions we've been reading, that bricks and mortar will continue to be important. Of course, online will enjoy the high levels and accelerated pace it has achieved, but people will want to return to stores. Re-engagement will be different. It will be easing back. It's not going to be a race. Consumer expectations will be changed, and it's going to be very complex. There will be operational changes required. You're going to need to emphasize customer service, and you're going to need to be able to think omni-channel. We also believe visual display and innovation will never be more important. It will be expected. It will be the new bar. As you're putting together a visual display strategy, and we like to think about it as a strategy, it's not something that just happens, you should take a look at what's happening with your consumer. You should look at the marketplace. You should look at what your team can bring to the party, what their experience tells them and tells you, and then your personal experience as well. And we also like to say this is not a static thing. Doesn't just happen once and then you run with it. You have to continually evolve. Listening to or looking at an NPD tweet a couple of weeks ago, they talked about understanding consumer behavior has never been more important to the health of retail. We really believe that, and we want to encourage you to be looking at all kinds of consumer habits, consumer trends as you think about your strategy. One of the things that none of us can ignore right now is the whole idea of staying home and staying safe. Our friends at Data Essential did some research that was published just yesterday talking about how important it is for consumers. They're worried. They want to be able to go back, but it's going to be slow. Safety is at the top of everybody's list. How are you going to make sure your store is clean? How are you going to communicate that to your guests and your staff? And how can you continually adjust to meet expectations? You have to think externally, internally, and what your staff is doing. And there will be tweaks along the way. Nobody knows for sure how this is best executed, but we do have some examples that we'll talk about throughout the presentation. As we mentioned, going back will be gradual. We think consumers, not the government, will determine when people go back to retail and back to stores. This research was done a couple of weeks ago by a company called Civic Science, and in that research, about 38% of people said yes, they're going to resume normal activities, but another 30% saying they're going to remain in quarantine. They really want to understand what's happening. The activities will resume based on the size of the event. We've heard long and loud that shopping and grocery and small environments are things that people have to do and they feel comfortable in, but large crowds are going to be more difficult. We also can't emphasize enough that there will be significant variations based on demographics and geography and consumer confidence. We've got a great example here, also from Civic Science from a couple of weeks ago, showing that men and women think differently about what's important and social distancing and what are they missing the most. You can see both of them are missing going out with friends. They both miss going out to bars and restaurants. Women miss shopping more. Men miss watching sports and going to sporting events more. But we like this chart not because it represents something that isn't an actual permanent idea, but the fact that you have to be looking at what your consumer base wants to do. The biggest question everybody has, and this research was published over the last couple of weeks as well, some as recently as this week, was what's going to happen when consumers go back? We know, as we talked about, safety is important. We know that grocery stores make people feel safe. So we're encouraging you to look at what are the practices that grocery stores are doing to make people feel safe. We also see that there's not a lot of difference between big box retailers and small local businesses and warehouse clubs. So they all have about an equal chance for getting people back into the stores. We also show another source talking about, this is also from First Insights, but also talking about the difference between gender and their level of feeling safety in stores. Loved this research that came out that people miss shopping. They miss shopping for clothes, they miss shopping for home decor and accessories. Footwear surprised us with, you know, all the jokes lately. I don't know if you've seen on your Instagram or your Facebook feeds, people are celebrating the fact that they actually put on shoes today. We think that this is a great indication that there will be some nice traffic in store. That's all underlined with the caveat that the same group of consumers is saying they expect discounts to play out. We will be watching this because you'll have to couple not only consumer expectations for discounts as they are potentially having a hard time financially or watching their pennies, but you'll have other retail competitors who are either going out of business or are looking to move inventory that might not be timely. So that's all going to play into a very interesting pot here. This chart, or this slide from Ipsos, is one that we really like and one that we think you should all take to heart. The retail experience is about tasks and it's about shopping. They're very different. One is very transactional. I need this, I want to go out and get that. And the other is a little more fluid, it's a little more experiential, it's more about how I spend my time, the discovery, all those great things that you think about when you shop. And a retailer at this moment in time has an opportunity to do both. They need to make sure that people feel comfortable going in and out and getting what they need, but they also need to find a way to make that experience fun and interesting. So keep this in mind as you think about your visual displays. How can you make it easy? How can you make it interesting? The other thing, you can't turn around today without seeing some reference to Maslow's hierarchy. And I like to remind anybody that's asking about retail to keep in mind that you need to cover as many of these as possible, but you ultimately have to cover those bottom ones. If people don't feel safe, they're not going to get into the stuff that makes them feel good. So keep that in mind. This Maslow's hierarchy could be an entire separate presentation and discussion, so we won't dwell on it, but think about it, figure out how it applies to your consumer and their needs. The other thing I want to make sure to mention is there are resources out there that you as a manufacturer or you as a retailer should be looking at. Some of them are free, some of them are behind a paywall, but in all instances there's great detail. The National Retail Federation and International Market Centers, the hosts of this webinar, have tools and techniques for you that can help you take some of the mystery out of what you need to do. Some of them are broken down by kind of activity as seen here. What do I need to do to reorder? What are some best practices around curbside or making in-store appointments? And others are just checklists. The most fascinating thing we've seen is that retailers in these are stepping up to the plate with some collaborations. Target, for example, put together an entire, I think it's a 60-page booklet on how to get back to retail, and they're making that available to other retailers. If you are like a copy and you haven't found one, please let us know. We'll provide contact information at the end. But we think that this is really interesting because clearly they have decided that when people feel safe at any retail, they will feel safe at our retail. So they're investing in making the entire retail experience better. I think this is a fascinating collaboration. So we'll step back here now and say, what does this all have to do with visual display? You've given us a lot of data, a lot of things to think about as far as looking at our consumer, checking their temperature to see where they are. And really what we wanted to do is reinforce that visual display is all about making people stop, engage, and acting. And if they don't feel safe, they won't do that. And in this instant, act is really to buy and purchase and ring up the cash register and bring things home that they like and do all that fun stuff that shopping used to be. When we think about visual display and how it impacts your ROI, we know that you have about 2 seconds to make that first impression, and that's going to drive initial and future transactions. Close to 70% of people have felt that the signage and display reflect the quality of the store and the assortment. So we want the visual display to really reflect what you stand for in your store. We had one, Michelle and I worked with one museum-based store. They revealed 1,000-time increase in their throughput and their profitability and their sales when they took a stab at improving their visual merchandising. We think that's certainly an extreme case, but most people are reporting, at least a 1.5 to 2 to 3 times sales velocity. So we think there's great potential there. The other benefits include building your brand and letting consumers know what you stand for, and then making them remember you when they need to do something else. We took a stab at putting forth just a few numbers again to demonstrate the ROI. And if you had one customer coming through the door, call it 315 or so days a year, 20% of them, because they saw something great in your window, 20% of them bought something for about $25. That could result in incremental sales of up to $47, close to $5,000 a year if they came in more than once. Thinking about it another way, if you had just 5 customers that half the time spent another $5, and one customer 50 days of the year, once a week, that bought something for $25. I mean, quickly this all adds up to an additional 30 grand. We encourage you to think about your display. What do you have at different price points, and come up with some scenarios so that you can test and try and figure out some targets for you with your display. We've all been here, great display on the left-hand side where you've got all this fun Easter product. But as you step back, and this is now where we're going to start getting into what your visual display should look like. When you step back, the thing that you may have missed if you were embroiled in putting this display together is those rabbits do not look happy. They look like you're in a gamekeeper's cabin. And we think that's a little bit of a miss for this particular retailer. We also have all been in the store when the stock is low. This particular photo was taken for back to school. And one of the things we think is going to happen is people will be buying things closer to their need. So this kind of activity is going to be hard to manage. But these are our visual displays that have room for improvement. One of the things we do know is that your brain absorbs a whole lot of information. I had the great pleasure of listening to a brain scientist talk about visual display and retailing at Ambiente a couple of years ago. And he had some wonderful points about how your brain perceives this amount, and you really understand that it's taking in this, you funnel through, and this is what you're interested in, and this is what you remember. So the trick is getting your mind back to as many levels as you can, and that's where you can use all the tools and techniques to help engage with your customer. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and she's going to talk about incorporating trend into that so you can create that emotional connection with your consumer.
Exactly. Well, every visual display, whether you intend it or not, does more than highlight products. It also says something about your brand. And just as importantly, it communicates a trend message to shoppers. Displays impact not only how consumers see the personality of your business, but also how they identify your level of trend involvement. So today, trends last somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 to 3 years, and they follow a fairly predictable path from the first time they emerge until the last moment they have any significance at retail. Consumers really want to understand where retailers fit into that life cycle. It lets them know whether they should rush the door or just keep on walking. So you want your visual display to tell them not only what products they'll find inside, but also what trend positioning to expect when they walk in the door. Your opportunity to make a great first impression always starts at the windows. This is one of 3 key locations in every retail venue that communicates the strongest trend messages. Of course, windows can be completely functional. They literally provide a view of what's inside the store, or they might call out a special sale or an event. But I think that's a wasted opportunity when instead you can make a statement about something that matters to your customer. Eco-responsibility is a perfect example. This has been an accelerating topic, and it's been driven quite a bit by millennials. But today, Gen Zs are adding their voices, their disposable income, and influence to this product and packaging trend because they believe it's so important. A Nielsen study showed that 77% of Gen Zs are willing to pay more for environmentally friendly products. This concern is touching every price point. Research last month by Kearney showed that nearly half of consumers say the pandemic has made them even more concerned about the environment. Now, don't lull yourself into believing that Gen Z is too young to impact your business. Their influence is everywhere, and it is quite powerful. We see this as a paradigm shift. So why not tell consumers with visual display that you're on board? Wellness overlaps eco themes. It encompasses everything from organic ingredients to mindfulness and stress reduction, which was already top of mind for consumers, and it's even more so during the pandemic. Athleisure lives here, so do meditation and medicines. The wellness industry is estimated at $4.2 trillion. Isn't that worth a sign in the window to get your piece of the pie? Purpose-driven policies are a growing factor in purchasing decisions. A 2018 Accenture Strategy global survey found that 42% of consumers have stopped doing business with a company whose values aren't a match when it comes to labor practices or sourcing materials or packaging or even giving back. 87% of millennials believe companies should address urgent social and environmental issues, and this is according to the Sustainability Management School of Business. So no wonder we're seeing more and more products carrying ethical labels, and more retailers are revealing their ethical positions right at the window. And the savviest among them are doing so in the vernacular of their younger adult customers, like you see in the slide on the left. Window displays, when they're done well, draw you in both literally and figuratively. This window showcases the immensely popular modern style in a way that just makes you want to come in and get comfortable. The next window here uses simple motion to catch the eye and highlight the store's seasonal assortment. The next windows were constructed in a way that says, come over here, take a closer look. They're tantalizing. They promise you a surprise, and going nearer really pays off when a trend message is revealed, like mixed prints or maybe even a new color. We need to stop and talk for a minute about color, because color is the most important aspect of any product, any display, any room setting, any vignette. It always catches the eye, and this is particularly true for brights and trend-forward neon hues. And it's true whether the display is in a window or maybe it's something inside the store or shop. And by the way, it doesn't have to be expensive or even something you can't monetize directly. This display, for example, is immensely shoppable. But the point is that when you integrate color and on-trend color, especially on-trend color, ups the impact. And this can be true even when the hues are not bold. Just adding a fresh or an unexpected color can generate new interest and sales. For example, a year ago, the trend was bringing deep and dark hues that were also impacting everyday decor to Halloween. This year, for that same season, blues are key. They're working their way into directional seasonal assortments and displays, and really making sure that consumers take notice. You know, one reason that this is happening with blue is the astronomical growth of Day of the Dead, which we see being embraced by a range of cultures. Color stories for Day of the Dead include hues that haven't been part of fall assortments in the past, and now they're appearing in lots of themes. Blue is one of them. Another reason is just cyclical. Fall palettes periodically add a new accent color to update the look. We've seen purple in that role, we've seen eucalyptus in the past, and now it's versions of blue, from spa to teal to denim, always in the middle range, and we anticipate continued growth for this trend into the new decade. We've already talked about windows having a trend impact. Well, the display that greets you when you walk in the door makes another major announcement about who you are as a retailer and where you live on that bell curve for trend that I showed you a minute ago. This is another defining moment in your relationship with your customer. It all makes sense. All retailers want to put their best foot forward and make a great first impression. But what we're talking about here is adding trend into the equation. That produces a multiplier effect that ups the impact of your visual display. Case in point, games. Well, why care about games? Because they were already on a roll before COVID-19. Now they're considered essential for stay-at-home sanity. So start with classic board games that were set to add over $1 billion in sales by 2025. Then go on to tabletop games. And these are games which might include not just the boards, but also game pieces and dice and battle markers and cards and so much more. The global market value of tabletop games was estimated at $7.2 billion in 2018 and was forecasted to reach $12 billion by 2023. That was before the pandemic. That's 3 years from now. Nobody knows the upper limit of video games and tabletop games right now. By the way, you may like to know that boomers are involved in gaming. Not only are they playing, but women over 50 and even over 65 are playing more than men. How can you speak to that in your store? Altogether, women over 50 are having a moment that I don't think is going away anytime soon. You can see it in articles like these or in national print and TV ads. I love the next one. It's from the brand NYX. And websites are popping up. If you haven't seen Oldish, I recommend it. And gray hair is becoming a badge of honor. So how can your store tap into this movement? It's a question you might ask yourself. Well, you've probably already seen African-themed products from vendors at retail for home and apparel. This style is building, even though it is no longer considered new. So what's new? What's next? Aboriginal looks are the next step for newness. This style is in the earliest emerging stages. So if your assortment is on the cutting edge, this look right here, this is Aboriginal, this look is for you. We first noticed Aboriginal design in tabletop from Villeray and Bach last fall, and now we see it trickling into retail assortments. Not just in hard goods, but also in apparel and in soft goods for home. We're also seeing clues about expansion into a broader Australian theme, so we're tracking koalas and other icons associated with the land down under. Consumers who see these displays will know that retailers who have them are early on the trend. We like Aboriginal, by the way, into early 2022. Now, beyond windows and entrance displays, customers also get positioning cues from feature presentations. So let's look at a couple of examples of how this has been done with trend in mind. In this display, outdoor living is the theme. If you carry home products or accessories and you don't already have a part of your assortment devoted to outdoor, now's the time. Why? Because 68% of people use their outdoor space at least several times each week in seasonal weather. And why not? With casual living so embedded in our psyche that it's become a lifestyle and not a trend, backyard barbecues and sitting down on the patio next to the pool, these are being viewed as important ways to relax. They'll become even more important for those who are uncomfortable leaving the house even after stay-at-home orders are lifted. Today, outdoor spaces are getting more attention than ever, and that has real consequences. The first one is that the status of patios and decks has risen to that of outdoor rooms. More importantly, consumers are approaching these open air spaces with the same eye toward trend that they're applying to their interiors, and that gives outdoor furniture and accessories new opportunities for growth. All this means that displays featuring products for outdoor living hold an opportunity for not only making a trend statement, but also for generating incremental sales. So now we'll go ahead to the next slide. I mentioned neon colors in our conversation about windows, and now I'll show you how they can make feature displays stand out. We've already seen this happening in Europe. That's where these two slides are from. And one retailer gave us clues as to why neons are returning. They are part of a punk trend that's in the earliest emerging stages. So it's not just neon colors. We also see plaids, icons like skulls and safety pins, over-ear headphones, guitars, lightning bolts. These were also part of the story, and we're seeing them again. Now, in the US, we're not quite that far. Color is leading the way. And what's interesting about the neon trend is that it seems to be quite democratized. So we're seeing it not only in department stores, but also at lower price points, and definitely in seasonal products. By the way, not just for Halloween, where you might say, oh, well, that's a perfect fit, but also seasonal products for Christmas. So that's perhaps a bit of a surprise. This feature display is not here because it looks so great. It's in front of you to point out another emerging trend. Now, this one can feel a little bit uncomfortable, so I want to say from the outset that giving it some space in this presentation does not constitute an endorsement. We're showing this to you because it is, in fact, a trend. I call this one Saints and Sinners. It first came to our attention at the September edition of Maison et Objet. You may know that that's an important trade fair for home furnishings in Paris. And there we began to see religious motifs used as decor, usually with a little bit of a twist. Crucifixes, saints, sacred hearts, holy card lookalikes that appeared on cushions and wall art and trays. And at the same time, we also saw curse words, figurines in sex poses, and more really unexpected icons highlighting an emerging tendency toward provocative words and images. And now Saints and Sinners is working its way into retail assortments. Now, this store calls itself a Christian-based operation, and sentiments on the products could also be characterized as unexpected, but they're not really provocative. So contrast this with representations of the devil that go beyond Halloween, phrases with a punch, and I've got to tell you, a surprising number of products utilizing the F word in ways that sit on the border between funny and inappropriate. While some people are shocked by it, they're also intrigued. Others are shocked, and they are appalled. The two sides of this trend are emerging, sometimes in conjunction with punk, but in other cases, Saints and Sinners simply showcases a tone that we've all noticed for at least 3 years. Boundaries that were once unmovable are now in flux. Decorum is dissolving, and things that could not be said out loud before are being heard, at least by some. The dichotomy represented by this trend, more than any other that we've discussed today, points out the importance of knowing your customer. This one is admittedly polarizing, and while I want you to know about it, I also encourage you to approach it with care. Again, know your customer.
Now that Michelle's talked about the importance of trend, we're going to take a step back and say, how can you do all these things in your store? How much does it cost? What are the steps that you need to do? So what we've done next is broken out a couple of the the tools that you should be thinking about. So trend, as Michelle just reviewed, color, as she reviewed, tech display and fixtures, we touched on that. We'll get into that a little deeper. Signage, ambience, make sure you include all scents. We can't talk about touch and smell in this presentation, but think about it. Lighting, windows, and underutilized space. So as we go through the next phase of the discussion, we will show you some of the tens of thousands of photos we have of displays around the world that incorporate some of these techniques in various ways. We're also going to break it down into just steps for you that should make it easy for you to recreate this thinking in your own store. But before we do that, the first thing we want to do is recommend that when you get back to your store, or you look at it, or you're in a place where you like what's happening and you want to replicate it, or you just something is intriguing, stop, close your eyes if you can, spin around, and then open them. What's the first thing you see? What's the first thing you smell? What's the first thing you hear? Those are the kinds of things you want to incorporate in your visual display. So keep that idea in the back of your mind. So the first of our easy steps to winning displays is to identify your space. Think about what area you have to work with. This example from Galleries Lafayette is kind of at the pinnacle of what you can do, literally and figuratively. What they did here was they created a display to bring consumers into their store, bring customers into their store of all ages, and it's essentially a glass walkway that suspends out over the dome 4 or 5 stories up in the ground. It's great for taking selfies. It just got people engaged. We saw people on all levels taking photos, but it also brought people into the store that might not typically do it, walking through departments, and gave them an opportunity to engage. Another area that we think is often missed is an entryway or a doorway. Here at the Ala Moana Center over the Christmas holidays last year, they had a selfie station where you could let people know you were signing in from Hawaii. At Brown and Thomas, they took what is probably an employees only or a storage room and incorporated that into the design to keep the festive theme going. And one of my personal favorites was at Schiphol Airport last year. And they had a little selfie station or a photo station where you could sit down and you could see the pictures, the little hearts on the left, you could hold them. They said things like, "I love you, best friends forever." But it was a way to bring people into the store, taking advantage of that space Michelle talked about with the windows, the right as you enter, kind of capturing their attention. We also love this example from Selfridges. Here what they did is actually cut into the wall, which also would have normally been a hallway, and use that as space to put their story together. Loved the way they used puns. They're, dare to party, all these party supplies, but they X'd out party and made it petrified to reinforce the theme. These two slides, one from Ilum in Copenhagen and Galeries Lafayette in Paris, are great examples of using space around the elevators. We love the one on the left for the way it uses crates that are inexpensive and showcases a lot of different styles. And the one on the right is pure genius, where there's an area that would completely be underutilized, that you have a chance to interact with customers as they're riding up or down the escalator. These are also two areas overlooking in what would be wasted space, either next to or adjacent to an escalator, or overlooking an open area like a courtyard, where you have a chance to showcase product and get consumers to look at it. In the Letters to Santa, which is a theme that Michelle talks about in her seasonal offering, you've got a great chance at Macy's here to sit down, write your letter to Santa, and put it right in the box. It's a great activity for families. The next thing we want to talk about is fixtures. And when people think of fixtures, it doesn't have to be expensive. One of the things that we've really enjoyed seeing over the past couple of years is how innovative people are getting with simple things. Here on the left, you see at Selfridges, it's just a simple rolling cart that has product in it. And we've seen on many occasions people using ladders with either boards or something across to showcase material or showcase product, like they did here at John Lewis. Also love this one at Holt Renfrew, where they've got the tables on wheels that you can move to put in different locations as you want, but there's also the ladder as you see on the left, and the mannequin is kind of a genius. It's got a towel thrown over its head, or thrown over its shoulder, but you can see how they're trying to draw the consumer in and let you say, this is something you can recreate in your home. This example from Magazine du Nord around fixtures is one, there's a pallet on the bottom of this stack, and while I love it visually, I'm worried that it's going to be a giant Jenga, and as soon as somebody takes something off, the whole thing will collapse. So you can see that they've also showcased product on the left on regular shelves, so that would be something to watch out for. Love the way on the right they've incorporated signs and product in what would normally just be like a dresser or some kind of thing, and the fixture becomes part of the display itself. Seen this in several locations, from the highest of the high-end stores to Target and their Magnolia program. It's bringing you in with the fixture into the house. It welcomes you into the shop within a shop, or just makes it more evocative of home and the message they're trying to bring. So if there's ways you can utilize architecture like that, think about it. These are two we wanted to pause on. On the left, you've got Dunnes Store in Dublin, and they've created a great seasonal display that you can shop from all sides. And Marks and Spencer did the same thing, but not round, it's square. But in each of these instances, when you think about social distancing and what retailers will need to do going forward, this gives you a chance to shop, showcase, and not have to be standing shoulder to shoulder with other guests. So we encourage you to look at things like this to the best of your ability. Another thing we want to encourage you to do is create a focal point and build around it. John Lewis did a great series of these trees this last Christmas, where they created the tree over on the left-hand side on the lower little platform. They've got a card that tells you how to do it, what ornaments you need, how to put the look together. And that's just a great thing that you could do in almost any category, whether it was home or gift or apparel. It's like, here's how to get this look. So we encourage you to do that to the best of your ability. And I think that also is a great way to help people navigate through re-entering into stores where they might be a little timid about running around in every section and trying things. They want a solution, and this helps them do that. Also love this example, the neon and the back to, you can't miss this whole thing, using the neon taped accents on the floor and on the display case, the moving, rolling shelf stands on the left-hand side. But also like the tape, and we're seeing tape used a lot now as stores reopen to just help people identify what space constraints they should be aware of. One of my personal favorites, this is from Beaumarchais last year, and here they created a focal point, and this truck, when you came in, you saw it. It was overpowering, the one on the right. And then they also created ancillary displays around it with traditional kiosks on the left, but also incorporating an architectural element in the middle that would have been wasted space. And that helps create that focal point, and then everything kind of built in around it. So we think that's a technique you can use no matter what kind of retailer you have. This was from Timberland this past year, and they also created this wonderful focal point. And what they did was, showcase some of their new product, and then created a story, which we're going to get into in the future. But it really gave you something to focus on, and then the rest of the store kind of built out and told the story. Selfridges and Lakeland both did something here where they created an icon. The one on the left, I used to say, if you were in the Easter business and you didn't have a display like this, shame on you. It's shoppable from all sides. It's scalable. It can be done in almost any substrate. It can showcase almost any product. Lakeland did something similar, but where they fell, in my estimation, was it's only shoppable from one side. So you've essentially got 3/4 of the display that's wasted. So as you think about shopping things from all sides, think about the Dunnes one, as well as the Marks and Spencer at the beginning of the section, as well as something like this. So your fixture can really have an impact on that. Another technique you should be thinking about is using levels. Here we have the general store in Minnetonka, Minnesota, where they use levels in different ways. One by utilizing an old Hoosier cabinet, and every conceivable product and level that could be used on that is. More traditional stands in the middle. And then the one on the left, or the one on the right, excuse me, is very inspired. They used logs and pulled out different pieces to showcase their moccasin collection. And you could do that for shoes, you could do that for socks, you could do that for almost any category, but it was just a really interesting way to use levels. When you think about levels, don't just think about product, think about your signage. These three examples, one on the floor, one on the wall, and one on the ceiling, show that there's a lot of ways to get people excited about what you have going on in the store by being at different visual lines of sight. Anthropology did a really fun job having these leaves coming down from the ceiling to showcase their fall collection. And I really love what they did here by having the different levels, drawing your eye through and up, and trying to help put the outfit together in that way. Magazine du Nord did a great job with their Marimekko store with product at different and shelves, on display racks, and on a table, bringing you through the store. And Altered States also did a really nice job using different levels of tables along with mannequins and racks. Champs, as one would expect from an athletic shoes store, had lots of different product to showcase. Great use of bleachers to do that. I think it's fun. Not only does it showcase a wide variety of product in a very eye-catching way, but it also lets you stand apart from each other as you're walking through. You're not all clustered together around a little rack. So I thought that was a lot of fun. One of Michelle's favorite items is here on the left at Go Home, where they took books, antiquarian books, or whatever theme you might want, and just suspended them with fishing wire from the ceiling to create just a really interesting, fun ambiance. And then Kaufhof again used displays in different sizes to show different ways you could execute and integrate product, which we think is also going to be very important going forward. Telling that story, which I mentioned earlier, is something that we think is going to be critical. Bringing consumers all the way through. This example from John Lewis is a couple years old and one of my favorite, but what they did is they created a little backyard with the picket fence and the grass, and then everything you could possibly need for your pet, whether it's a pet bed or dog dishes or a canister to hold the dog food. It's all right there and waiting for you, so it really completes the message. Butler's does a great job of that. They have on these rolling racks with tables next to them. They showcase what it could look like to put an assortment together, and then behind the wall, so behind where it says full of ideas, you can see on the left that they showcase everything you would need for that. So it's telling that story of the dinner party. Here's everything you need, again, offering that solution. At Lobovita in Paris, everything you want for an afternoon with your friends or with your children, all the tools, the recipes, the techniques, and just gave you great inspiration for how to spend the afternoon. This is in Sierra. This is at a store called Sierra, and as you walk in the door, that's telling a story of I'm going camping, or I'm going tailgating, or I'm doing something fun, but it captures your attention. It gives you everything you need to know, and it helps you get in the mood, which is what we want. This example from Marks and Spencer was around the Frozen 2 launch last November. They had an exclusive in the UK, and they really showcased and told this story about Frozen in every kind of product conceivable. Michelle and I were looking at this yesterday and trying to figure out, could you do this in today's environment where you need to be socially distancing, and how could people shop around it? And we think there's things that will work and things that won't, but we loved the way that it was shoppable from all sides, whether you were coming or going. It integrated all the different departments, and it really told you as a consumer that this was your Frozen headquarters. So it really told that story. And lastly, for this section, I believe American Eagle was doing some personalization, and we thought this was really fun. Right there, front and center, in their window, they're telling you the story of how you can make these jeans your own. And they have the craftsman who's doing that right there working. So it reinforces what they're doing. It's personal, it's for you, and you can't miss it when you're walking by. The last thing we want to talk about in this section is how to integrate your POP. And it can be anything from this at Fenwick's, where we're talking about tremendous things in store for you and a welcoming arch, to things like, this is what we stand for. This is what's different and interesting and fun about the jeans on the left. And here's who we want to feel special today on the right. And we've seen a lot of that lately, calling out nurses and doctors and first responders and all different other kinds of people that we want to reward, and using your POP is a great way to do that. Another thing we actually love, to steal the line from the sign here, is the way Amazon, we're all used to shopping Amazon, and if you bought this, here are our recommendations. Well, you can see that happening at bookstores too. And it's not a new practice, but we think it's something that could be translated into all different kinds of categories, whether it's makeup or home accessories or personal accessories or books or whatever. If you like this, you'll love that. If you love this scent, here's other things that are available. Integrating, as Michelle said, talking about if your customers and the people that walk through your door they care about certain things, integrating that into your POP with signage and humor is also something we think is a lot of fun. So here you've got the little deer ears and a discussion about how we reduced our paw print. And I think that's something that's going to continue to be important going forward. Primark did a great job last year of integrating all of their apparel and POP into a story that let you know, again, they were the Ren and Stimpy, not the Ren and Stimpy, that they were the Rick and Morty, the Rick and Morty headquarters. So it was in their windows, it was on their floor stands, it was on their wall displays, it was as you came on and off the escalator and on and off the elevator, it was there everywhere. And it really helped you communicate that if you're looking for Rick and Morty product, this is where you need to come. I want to switch into a little case study that's a little bit about visual merchandising and a little bit about what's happening around COVID activities. And Patina is a retailer here in the Twin Cities, that's where I'm from, and it's about 20 years old, and they've really kind of made a name for themselves having interesting and unique product. They did not, however, have a website, and when the governor closed down the stores, or closed down the state to retail, they had to quickly scramble and decide what they wanted to do. So they took to social media. They said, we're working hard to make our curbside experience easy and convenient. We're putting product on shelf. You can call us. We'll bring it out to you. And then after they did that initial, here's what we're going to do, then they showed you how they were going to keep their personality, their brand personality in what they were doing, even if they were closed. And this kind of borders on that saints and sinners thing Michelle was talking about. But it really captures the personality of their store and their brand. And then as the days and weeks went by, they showcased how this is working and wanting you to know that this is a viable function or a viable way to do business. So we thought they did a really nice job of transitioning from in-store only to online only, and now back in store again, that the state is opening up. And they very clearly articulated on their website some of the things they're doing, and we think this is going to be universal with as things we've talked about before, cleaning and sanitation, and what you expect from customers, what customers can expect from you. But then we've got a couple of examples here on the left. You can see the plexiglass that's separating the cashier from the customers, providing that protection for all. The marking on the bottom with tape showing you where the best place is to stand. And love the example that they sent us on the left, where they're providing signage that in their visual displays that has little extra information so you don't have to feel like you have to touch it all. And we think that that's something that is a great example for people to do. So if again, you have great product that catches your eye, but customers might want to know a little bit more, this gives them that little bit more of information. And the genius thing that we think they did was right inside the door, they have hand sanitizer from a local distillery that they partnered with to create this hand sanitizer. So not only are they reassuring customers that you can come in here, you can sanitize your hands, we're very clean, they're letting you know that that's top of mind, but then they're selling that same product in their store. So if you like that experience, you're able to take it home. So we thought that was just a really great way to do it. Another company that's being really innovative here in the Twin Cities is the Kitchen Window. And what they've done is they've let you know that, here in the Twin Cities, we don't have a lot of time for barbecue year round. And as Michelle said, it's an important part of lifestyle. So they're reinforcing that the barbecue lifestyle is something that is important, but they're letting you know, more importantly, that they have curbside pickup available. Then they went into a phase where they're saying not only do they have curbside, but we have free delivery if you're buying something that costs over $75. They're giving you recipes and usage occasions so that you can follow up with their traditional, their traditional product offering. And then to take it one step further, one of the things they have always done is rent out the kinds of things like a big paella pan that if you were having a gathering of 70 or 80 people, or even 20, you could rent. But now that people aren't doing that, they had to figure out a way to utilize that equipment and bring in some revenue. So they started in their demonstration kitchen making the paella, and you could order it and you could pick it up on Fridays and you could have that party experience at home without the hassle. I thought that was just a brilliant way to think about the retail changes that have been going on in the marketplace. We also really loved this one, and it's a way to give people a bunch of cookies in a great package that takes some of the pain away of worrying about who's touched it, how it's touched. It all comes prepackaged. So we think those are the kinds of things that people will be looking for in the future. So we're starting the summary start here, or starting the summary phase here of this discussion, but in a post-COVID world, we want you to know that we believe everybody, whether you're in manufacturer, a distributor, or retail, you're all involved in how to gain the consumer's trust, how to keep them safe, and how to make it easy for them to shop so that they will, in fact, buy and come back and buy again. We expect that online and offline integration to continue. We expect the whole ease of delivery and pickup to continue. We have seen all kinds of studies that people love the curbside pickup. So think about how to integrate that into your plans and into your visual display, letting people know that you do it. The concern for safety is going nowhere. There's going to be a recalibrated fear of missing out now that people have been home a lot. They've kind of reprioritized, and there's a recalibrated sense of accomplishment and what is really needed. So we're watching those to see what happens going forward. And the key takeaways from overall today are that bricks and mortar are still important. Visual display is an ROI opportunity. You've got 2 seconds to make that first impression. Above all, know your customers, speak to their priorities, incorporate and lead with trends so they know where you stand. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do all these things, and good display is everyone's responsibility. With that, we want to let you know as far as next steps are concerned. As we mentioned, if you want a copy of that Target thing, you can get in touch with us. Also, Michelle has done a phenomenal recap of what she believes it's going to be important for holiday products going forward, and she's offered a discount to Atlanta Market Atlanta Market guests. So make sure you follow up with that. And here's our contact information. So thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and attention, and please let us know if there's anything you have questions on or that we can help you with in the future.